almost everywhere we look, we see potential habitats for life. So that may mean that life is extremely common in the universe. It's just the way that our universe is. But if you ask a different question, what we've been talking about really all night is the ability of life to think and understand the universe, complex life. It's a different question. How common, even if microbes are common, how common is complex life? Well, there is something we can say about that, potentially. Because we can look at the history of life on Earth again. So if you look at the history of life on this planet, as I said, there's evidence of life 3.7, 3.8, even 4 billion years ago. So life's been present for pretty much the whole history of the Earth, give or take. But it was simple for most of it. So there's no evidence in the fossil record of anything more complex than a single cell back beyond, I would say, 1 billion years. Perhaps a little bit of evidence in the genetic record, but let's say 1 billion years or so. So the consensus is that for something like 3 billion years on this planet, then life was present but single-celled. Only in the last few 100 million years has it become complex, and only in the last few 100,000 years has there been life at our level. So by which I mean living things that can really think and begin to build a civilization and explore the universe. So the evidence here is that it took 4 billion years approximately to go from cell to civilization. That's a third of the age of the universe. That is an extremely long time. We're asking that on this planet at least, we're asking there was an unbroken chain of life for 1/3 of the age of the universe on a planet like this, which orbits around the star in a violent universe. We've seen the supernova explosions, there are impacts from space. We know that that chain of life has almost been severed several times that we've observed, and yet it's crept through. 4 billion years later, we have a civilization. So if that's typical, and I emphasize, we don't know, but the timescale here, if that's typical, then it may be that there are very few of those 20 billion potentially Earth-like worlds in the Milky Way galaxy that have been stable enough for long enough to produce something like us. I mean, many of the more massive stars in the universe don't even live for 4 billion years. So 4 billion years is a long time. So that means that there might be very few places in a galaxy like this where civilizations exist. I asked 2 friends of mine who work in this area to guess, right? It's an educated guess. And I said to one of them, how many civilizations do you think there are on average per galaxy? It's kind of a reasonably wide question. There's 2 trillion galaxies. On the average, how many civilizations in each one? He said, knowing what we know about the history of life on Earth, I would say 0 on average, close to 0. So many galaxies, in his view, would not contain civilizations. That may imply this Milky Way galaxy contains 1. Right? Another friend of mine, who's a biologist, put it in even more pithy terms. He said, that great arc of stars that you see across the sky, all those trillions of worlds, that sense of possibility, knowing what we know about life on Earth, all there will be up there at best is slime. Slime. Now this, I think, I said at the start, this question that's raised, what does it mean to live a finite, fragile life in an infinite, eternal universe? And given what I've said, you might think, well, it doesn't mean anything at all, right, to this point. I mean, it's clearly true that we're insignificant. I mean, physically. This planet is one planet around one star amongst 400 billion in one galaxy amongst 2 trillion in a small patch of the potentially infinite universe. Itself may be a single bubble in an infinite sea of bubble universes. So, you know, we're clearly physically insignificant. But that word meaning, I've kind of skipped over it. What is it? Not a very scientific word, you might think. Well, I would argue that whatever it is, it clearly exists in the universe because the universe means something to us. Of course, it means something to each of us. What is it though? Whatever, it's an emergent property. I would argue that it's a property of the universe because there are complex biological systems in the universe from which it can emerge. So that implies that if this is the only world, and it's an educated guess maybe, but if that's the only world where complex biological systems exist currently in the Milky Way galaxy at our level, that is the only place where meaning exists in the Milky Way galaxy currently. And that, I think, means that notwithstanding our physical insignificance that we've discussed at some length, this place may be unimaginably valuable.